Castles.
Okay. There's an old story that I love to tell about a dirty old woman who used to live in a dirty old house away up on the side of a hill in a country far, far away. She was called a Hermetriss because she didn't like to be with people. She just liked to live all by herself. She ate as little food as she could so that she wouldn't have to work any more than she just had to. She never swept her house, she never washed her clothes, and she never pulled the weeds from her garden. She just slept and sat in the sunshine nearly all the time. Down in the valley there was a beautiful city where the good king of the country lived, but the dirty old Hermetriss was content to live all by herself and only went to the city once in a while when it was necessary to sell a bundle of wood in order to buy something to eat. One day the dirty old woman was sitting in the sunshine among the weeds when she heard a horse coming up the path towards her house. Clop-a-dee-clop-dee-clop-dee-clop. And she looked, and it was the king riding on his horse up the hill. He came closer and closer. He tied his horse to a post and walked towards the dirty old house. And then he stood there looking over the valley to the majestic mountains on the other side.
What a beautiful sight! Aren't these mountains beautiful?
The dirty old Hermetriss heard the king speak and turned to look at the mountains.
Friend Hermetriss, may I come again to look at these majestic hills from your garden? The view from here is grand, and it makes me feel like a better man.
But the poor old Hermetriss was so ashamed of her dirty old house and her dirty old garden that she couldn't speak, and she hung her head in shame. And while she sat there wondering what to do, the king went away.
But he will come again. He said he would, and I must prepare for him.
So she cleared away the weeds and swept the path to her house and repaired her old broken stool and placed it in front of her house and waited for the king to come again. And one day she heard a horse coming up the hill again. Clop-a-dee-clop-dee-clop-dee-clop. And it was the king. And he came and sat in a stool and gazed over the valley to the beautiful, beautiful hills.
Thank you so much, friend Hermetriss. What a lovely view. May I please stay a little longer, and may I please have a glass of water to drink?
Poor old Hermetriss, her cup was dirty, and her bucket was empty, and her spring was muddy and overgrown with weeds. What could she do? In shame, she ran to the spring to clean her cup, but when she got back, the king had gone away.
But he will come again. He said he would, and I must prepare for him.
So she cleaned the spring and cleaned her cup. Then she put a table beside the little stool in front of her house and brought fresh water in her bucket every day and kept it on the table and waited for the king to come again. And one day she heard a horse coming up the hill again. Clop-a-dee-clop-dee-clop-dee-clop. And it was the king. And he came and sat in a stool and drank a cup of lovely cool water. Then he gazed over the valley to the beautiful hills.
Thank you so much, friend Hermetriss. I just love to come here and enjoy the beautiful view. It was so good for you to have lovely cool water already. I am so tired and hungry today. Could I please have a little bread to eat?
Poor old Hermetriss. She had nothing to eat but a few half-rotten grapes and a dry crust or two of bread. She didn't dare to offer them to the king. In shame, she went into her house and wondered what she could do. And while she was there, the king went away.
But he will come again. He said he would, and I must prepare for him.
So she went into the forest and cut wood and sold it in the city. and bought cornmeal and baked corn cakes every day. Then she watered her garden and weeded her turnips and waited for the king to come again. And one day she heard a horse coming up the hill again. Cloppity 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 clop. And it was the king. And he came and sat on the stool and drank the cool water and ate some corn cakes and some turnips.
Thank you so much, friend Hermetriss. Now I am all rested and refreshed, and I can sit up here and watch the sunset on those beautiful mountains. Friend Hermetriss, I'd like to sleep here for tonight, so I can see the sunrise in the morning.
Sleep here? Poor old Hermetriss. She didn't dare to tell the king that she had no bed, and as she slept on some old rags on the floor. In shame, she hung her head and went inside her house, wondering what she could do. And while she was there, the king went away.
But he will come again. He said he would, and I must prepare for him.
So she went to the forest and cut some nice poles and made a nice bed. Then she cut some more poles and made a nice veranda in front of her house. Then she sold some more wood and bought a nice mattress and a nice blanket. Then she noticed how dirty her house was, so she swept her house and washed her windows. Then she noticed how dirty her clothes were. So she sold some more wood and bought some nice new clothes. And every day she swept her house and weeded her garden and drew fresh water and baked corn cakes and bathed herself and dressed in her nice new clothes and waited for the king to come again. And one day she heard a horse coming up the hill again. Cloppity 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 clop. And it was the king. And the old Hermetriss went to meet him, and the king came and sat on the stool and drank the water and ate the corn cakes and watched the sunset behind the beautiful mountains.
Thank you so much, my friend. It has been so good for you to let me come and rest in your garden and refresh myself with your food and your water, and to sit here and look at the valley, at those great and strong mountains. God must be so great to be able to make mountains like that, and He is so good to let us see them. It makes me want to be a better man and a better king.
Then the king slept on a nice new bed. The king slept in a nice new bed and stayed with the Hermetriss all night and watched the sunrise in the morning. The old Hermetriss was so happy because the king ate with her and talked with her and stayed with her. She was not ashamed anymore, and she wasn't lazy anymore, and she wasn't dirty anymore, and the people didn't call her dirty old Hermetriss anymore. They called her the friend of the king.